Welcome back, Dive. We're here to sift through loads of, pull out. Today, we're plunging into, let's be honest, off Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. This deep dive, it's custom-tailored drawing called The 48 Laws of Power. Robert, now, our mission ever about critical awareness of power. Do you want to call it how day? It's about pack.
And what's really striking, I think, is just how consistent these patterns are across history. I mean, Greene's research is incredibly deep. It spans centuries, different cultures, figures like Machiavelli, Sun Tzu, even Queen Elizabeth I. And while, the laws can definitely seem amoral the way they're presented, they actually offer a surprisingly, objective lens for looking at human behavior, especially in situations involving influence and competition. It's about seeing the mechanics, the mechanics of power in play, not necessarily about using them yourself.
That's a really crucial distinction, isn't it? We're not here telling you how to play the game.
Exactly.
But more showing you how the game is often played. So, okay, let's start with some laws that hit right away on relating to authority and how we present ourselves. First up is Law 1, never outshine the master. What's the core idea here?
Basically, it's about managing your relationship with the people above you. Greene argues that subordinates need to be really careful on how they interact with authority figures, to avoid making them feel insecure or jealous. If you seem too smart, too capable, maybe too accomplished, it can actually provoke these defensive reactions, and that ends up hurting you.
And you see this, really dramatically in history, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
That example of Nicolas Fouquet, the French finance minister, back in 1661, he threw this incredibly lavish party for King Louis XIV. I mean, a display of wealth and taste that, frankly, was even beyond the king's own.
Big mistake.
Yeah, despite the grandeur, Fouquet gets arrested and thrown in prison not long after. It makes you wonder, why does being really good at something often threaten people instead of impressing them?
Well, it points to that fragility you often find in power structures, especially ones built more on ego than, say, pure merit. For some leaders, their subordinate success isn't seen as good leadership on their part. It's perceived as a challenge to their unique status. That a weird paradox of power, right? The very talent that can strengthen a leader is seen as a threat.
It's such a tricky balance. How does that translate to, a modern office?
Well, think about employees who, consistently knock it out of the park, but maybe they don't acknowledge their supervisor's guidance enough.
Okay.
Or they don't make sure that credit flows upwards. They might find themselves sort of pushed to the side, even though they're clearly competent. The law suggests the key is, yes, excel, definitely, but do it in a way that makes your superiors feel like their authority is respected, even enhanced.
So it's not challenged.
Exactly. Like you're making them look good, almost like you're an extension of their brilliance.
Fascinating. Okay, so if managing your boss's ego is crucial, what about managing how everyone else? That takes us to Law 5. So much depends on reputation. Guard it with your life? That sounds pretty...
It absolutely is. Greene basically says reputation often matters more than actual ability or what you've done. He portrays it as maybe the most valuable asset in power dynamic, really crucial for long-term success. Your reputation walks into the room before you do.
Yeah, it opens doors or closes them.
Precisely.
And you see this everywhere. Think about P.T. Barnum. He was a master at creating his own legend, wasn't he?
Totally.
Or, on the flip side, political smear campaigns. How they can just destroy careers, sometimes without any real basis, in fact.
And if you think about it now, digital communication, social media, that's only intensified this law's relevance, hasn't it?
Oh, massively.
Reputations can be built or, torn down almost instantly and sometimes permanently. Your online footprint alone can shape how people see your actions, who wants to associate with you, even whether you get the benefit of the doubt. A strong reputation, people might overlook small flaws. A weak, even minor things get amplified.
So the challenge then is, how do you balance being authentic, being yourself, with managing that reputation logically? It's not just what you do.
Right.
It's what think.
Exactly. And while some reputation building is obviously based on real achievement, this law can also nudge people towards deceptive image creation, where the appearance is everything, maybe more than the substance.
And how long can that last?
That's the question, isn't it?
Okay, speaking of appearances and perception, let's look at Law 6, court attention at all costs. This one's about visibility being essential for power. Greene argues that being obscure makes you irrelevant no matter how good you are. It almost sounds like any attention, even bad attention, is better than being ignored.
Yeah, historically, you look at someone like Oscar Wilde. He seemed to get that scandal could even boost his cultural influence in a strange way. And plenty of political leaders use controversial statements just to stay in the news cycle, right? To stay relevant, even if they get criticized.
Keeps their name out there.
Exactly. Psychologically, it taps into this idea that visibility equals important. If you're competing and you stay invisible, you often just miss out.
You see this everywhere now. Social media marketing, professional networking, just being consistently visible, putting yourself out there often seems to matter more than just being occasionally brilliant. It happens inside organizations, too. The people who make sure their work is seen tend to move up faster than the quiet ones in the back.
But there are big risks here, too. Attention seeking can definitely backfire if it looks desperate or just wrong.
Yeah, inappropriate.
And negative attention. Sure, it might be better than zero attention sometimes, but it can be incredibly hard to turn that into something positive, into real influence. The key insight, I think, is understanding that attention is like the prerequisite for influence. It gets you on the stage.
But it's not the performance itself.
Exactly. It's the stage, not the play.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so we've touched on presenting yourself, managing public image. Now let's pivot a bit. Let's get into the more strategic, sometimes kind of counterintuitive parts of power, focusing on how you interact with others. This brings us to law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemy. Wow, that really goes against the grain, doesn't it?
It really does. Greene's argument is that friends can be, well, dangerous because of expectations, maybe preferential treatment, even potential betrayal down the line. Whereas former enemies, if you convert them, can actually prove more loyal because they have something to prove. They need to demonstrate their loyalty.
It sounds very pragmatic, almost Machiavellian.
It is. It's rooted in that kind of thinking where decisions are based on what's effective, not always what feels morally, ideal.
Can you give us some historical examples of this in action?
Oh, absolutely. Think about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals cabinet. He deliberately brought in political opponents, and they became incredibly valuable advisors.
Right. He needed their strengths.
Exactly. Or Emperor Sejong of China. He apparently strengthened his reign by promoting former enemies into key positions. The psychology behind it is about different motivations, right? Friends might take their position for granted, assuming loyalty, but enemies turn to allies. They know their position depends entirely on proving their value, proving their loyalty to their new master.
And it's not just high politics, is it? You see this in business, like in hiring.
Yeah, point. Companies often recruit top people from their competitors.
And those former rivals, they often bring great insights, but also sometimes this fierce loyalty to the new company, maybe because they switch sides and feel they need to prove their new commitment.
It often gets criticized, this law. People say it promotes cynicism. But Greene's point isn't necessarily don't have friends. It's more about understanding the different dynamics in different relationships and making strategic choices based on that understanding. He's suggesting that emotional attachments can cloud your judgment when you're pursuing power.
Okay, so if relationships are about strategic decisions, what about what you actually reveal? That leads us nicely into Law 3. Conceal your intent. This stresses the strategic valuist, maybe using misdirection. Why is that considered so powerful?
Well, if you reveal your intentions too early, it lets other people prepare, maybe set up roadblocks or countermeasures.
Right, they can defend.
Exactly. Whereas concealment keeps that crucial element of surprise. It's about, keeping your cards close to your chest.
Otto von Bismarck. His maneuvering for German unification. That seems like a perfect example.
Textbook case.
He pulled it off through all these seemingly unrelated actions, and the real goal only became clear much later, in hindsight.
Or think about the Rothschild banking family. Part of how they built their fortune was through superior information network, knowing things others didn't and acting quiet. This law operates on lots of levels. It could be as simple as not telling your current colleagues you're looking for a new job.
Sure.
Or it could be creating deliberately false impressions about your goals to stop competitors from getting in your way.
And in business today.
You see it in strategic communication all the time. Tech companies, for instance, they guard their product development plans fiercely.
Keep it under wraps.
Yeah, to stop rivals from rushing out competing products. They don't want to give away their next big move.
It sounds almost like a necessary evil in competitive, but it does raise some ethical flags, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I mean, while some strategic privacy is generally accepted, like company protecting its trade secret, it can easily slide into manipulative deception that really harms people. Greene isn't necessarily saying go commit fraud.
Okay.
It's more about a strategic ambiguity that keeps opponents off balance, guessing, and stops them from messing with your plan. The line, I suppose, is between legitimate strategic privacy and outright manipulation.
Okay, this next one often gets Law 4. Always say less than necessary. Advocating for silence, brevity. Why is saying less often seen as more powerful?
Well, Greene argues that saying too much often reveals weakness, maybe uncertainty.
Right, let something slip.
Exactly. You might give away too much info, create vulnerabilities you didn't intend. Controlled communication, on the other hand, it projects authority, mystery even.
You think of historical figures like Louis XIV, the Sun King. Apparently, he mastered the art of the significant silence.
Right. Or even interrogation technique. Silence is used deliberately to make people uncomfortable, exploit that human tendency to fill awkward pauses.
And they end up volunteering information.
Precisely. Often more than they meant. Psychologically, brevity often reads as confidence, self-assurance. When someone doesn't say much, people tend to project deeper meaning onto their silence.
They assume they know more than they're letting on.
Right. And in professional settings, negotiations, presentations, leadership leaders who speak with precision economically often command more respect than those who ramble or over-explain.
It's definitely a powerful tool, but I can also see the downsides. When does it go too far?
Absolutely. This law has to be balanced against the real need for clear communication, transparency, especially when you need to collaborate.
Yeah. Teamwork needs open exchange.
Exact. Taken to extreme, saying too little can just create confusion, undermine teamwork, and really damage relationships that rely on trust and open communication. It's about strategic silence, not just being silent all the time.
Strategic silence. Okay, let's shift gears slightly now towards laws that focus more on controlling the narrative, influencing others through direct action and psychological. We can start with Law 7. Get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. This one feels pretty provocative.
It certainly does. This law tackles delegation, but also owning the result. Greene suggests effective leaders leverage other people's skills, their capabilities, while skillfully positioning themselves as the source of the ultimate achievement. It's about orchestrating success through what others do.
Thomas Edison's approach to invention comes. He set up these labs, channeled others' innovations through them, but he very famously kept his own identity as the primary inventor front and center.
Classic example. And you see it with political leaders too, right? Building legacies on policies that were mostly developed by their staff, but taking the public credit for the outcomes. It works through, strategic positioning, managing how information flows.
But in business today, you often see executives taking credit for what they're to come.
Yeah. Now, delegation inherently involves taking responsibility for the outcome, good or bad. But this law, the way Greene frames it, can easily cross the line into exploitative credit theft.
Which would destroy morale.
Absolutely. Right. Undermines team morale, individual recognition. There's a clear tension there of advancing yourself versus fairly recognizing the people who actually did the work.
It's definitely a cutthroat kind of. But what about the power of your own act? Law 9. Win through your action, never through argument. This argues demonstration is way more powerful than explanation when you're trying to convince people. Why is that?
Well, arguments often just make people defensive, right? They engage your logical brain, sure, but they also trigger emotional responses, ego response. Actions, though, especially successful actions, they just speak more convincingly. They're harder to argue.
Napoleon's rise based on military victories, not just talking a good game. It seems like a strong historical case.
Perfect example. He didn't just say he was a brilliant general. He went out and proved it repeatedly on the battlefield. Or think about science. Experimental results, actual data, that's always more convincing in the long run than just theoretical arguments.
So it suggests focusing on actually delivering results rather than spending all your time explaining why your approach is going to work.
Pretty much. In management, leaders often earn respect through making effective decisions, getting tangible results, not just by talking persuasively about their plans or qualifications. It's not that words are useless, obviously, but your action should back them up. And if there's a conflict between words and actions...
Or actions usually win out.
Generally, yeah. They tend to be more persuasive.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if your actions are your strongest argument, how do you make yourself indispensable? That sounds like Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent.
Yeah, this one advocates for making yourself essential by controlling resources or information or skills that other people need. The idea is that this creates a profound sense of security for you and influence over them.
You see this historically, right? Royal advisors who kept their power by being the only source of crucial information for the monarch.
Exactly. Or business leaders who built empires by controlling key resources or maybe unique distribution channels that nobody else had access to. The mechanisms often involve having exclusive access to something valuable, possessing unique skills nobody else has, or just being strategically positioned within a network.
And today, this could apply to how you develop your career, right? Cultivating unique, high-demand skills.
Definitely. Or business models designed to create customer dependency. Think proprietary systems, or really high switching costs that make it hard for customers to leave. Now, critics will say this just encourages manipulative behavior, making people reliant on you.
Sure.
But proponents might argue, well, everyone should try to develop some unique value that makes them hard to replace. How you choose to leverage that value is another question.
Okay, we've covered quite a bit on interaction and strategic act. Let's turn now to laws that deal more with personal identity, perception, and that crucial adapt. Law 25. Recreate yourself. This is about taking control of your own image, your identity, instead of just letting other people define you.
Right. It's about making conscious choices about how you present yourself to the world, cultivating distinctive characteristics, maybe even a dramatic persona. History is full of people who successfully reinvented themselves, didn't they? For new situations, new opportunities, and that consistent self-presentation, it shapes how others see you, how they expect you to act, sort of builds a new reality around.
This seems directly applicable today. personal branding strategies, planning a career pivot, even managing your social media presence. You're actively curating how you're
Exactly. You're building a narrative about who you are.
Okay, and now for the final law in Greene's book, Law 48, assume formula. This one advocates for extreme flexibility, adaptability, not getting too attached to any one strategy or structure or even identity. Why is being rigid seen as such a weakness?
Greene argues that rigidity makes you vulnerable because, well, the world has always changed. This law pulls heavily from military history examples where flexible, adaptable forces beat rigid, predictable ones.
Right, the ones who could change tactics on the fly.
Precisely. And you see it in business, too. Adaptable companies survive, even thrive during big shifts, while inflexible competitors just fail. Psychologically, yeah, humans tend to like routine, predictable patterns. But those tendencies can become huge liabilities when things are dynamic and unpredictable. The core idea here is maintain your fundamental principles, your core values maybe, but stay completely flexible about your methods, your tactics. Be like water, able to flow around things or carve new paths when needed.
So this applies to business strategy being agile. Career strategy, developing transferables, not just narrow.
Yeah, and even personal development, building resilience, adaptability to handle whatever life throws at you. It's also about intellectual flexibility, not getting so rigidly attached to specific beliefs that you can't adapt to new information or changing circumstances.
So after all that, what does this mean for you, the person? We've unpacked a good chunk of Greene's laws, looked at their historical roots, their psychological basis, but it's really crucial to put them into context.
Absolutely. Let's try and synthesize the strengths here. First, that huge historical scope. It gives incredible perspective on these recurring patterns in human behavior across cultures, across time. It's quite powerful. Second, many of the psychological insights, they still feel very relevant today, especially around influence, strategic thinking. Third, that amoral approach. While it can be jarring, it does allow for a pretty objective analysis of how power actually seems to operate in the world, not just how we wish it would.
Right, the mechanics again.
Exactly. And finally, many of the laws do offer practical insight for professional development, negotiation, leadership, things that can be applied effectively, ethically, within the right context.
But, as you pointed out earlier, Greene's work isn't simple. There are tensions. Several laws, if you take them literally, they definitely seem to advocate for manipulation, deception. And if you apply those without thinking critically, they can undeniably damage relationships, create really toxic environments.
No question.
And the book's strong focus on individual advancement, sometimes that clashes with the collaborative approach we need today, right? Where teamwork and transparency are success.
Absolutely. And that's why the modern application of Greene's ideas often requires significant adaptation. You need to fit them into contemporary values, modern context. Many of the most valuable insights, I think, can be reframed. You can think of them as legitimate influence, strategic thinking, without needing to go down the path of manipulation or exploitation.
So, updating them for today.
Yeah. Things like reputation management, timing, paying attention to relationships, strategic thinking, they're incredibly relevant in the digital age, but they definitely need updating for social media, global communication, modern ways of working, and crucially, just understanding these power dynamics. That's valuable in itself. It helps you recognize when others might be using manipulative tactics.
Even if you choose not to use them yourself.
Exactly. It gives you an informed perspective. You can see the game being played.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the 48 laws of power, hopefully you've gained a framework for understanding some complex social dynamics, some patterns of human behavior. It's not meant as a blueprint for how you should act.
No.
But maybe a powerful tool for awareness, just seeing the world perhaps through a slightly different lens.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the most sustainable ways to gain power and influence, they generally involve creating genuine value for other people while also advancing. It's not usually about seeing every interaction zero-sum game to win, someone else has to lose. So maybe the question for you, listen, what stands out to you about how these laws might be applied or perhaps consciously avoided in building truly lasting light? Something to think